They dragged her through the heart of town like a warning carved in flesh. No crime spoken aloud, no trial offered, just a rope and a crowd eager to see how cruelty looked in daylight. By sundown, Dry Gulch would remember the sound of fibers snapping and the moment a mountain man decided he'd seen enough. Dry Gulch, Wyoming Territory, late 1878. The sun sagged low behind the jagged ridge, spilling a raw orange bleed across the dust-choked square. Wind scraped through the streets harder than the law ever had, lifting grit into eyes and mouths, rattling loose signs and shutters like nervous bones. This was a place where women were counted as possessions and men wore authority the way they wore pistols, visible and unquestioned. By late afternoon the town always gathered, as if cruelty needed witnesses. Gamblers lounged against porch rails, boots crossed, cards forgotten. Ranch hands spat tobacco into the dirt, marking the ground like territory. Women clutched shawls tight around their shoulders, eyes sharp but bodies angled away, trained to watch without seeming to. This was the stage, and in the center of it stood Maribel Carter. She was 24, small-framed, dark-eyed, soft-spoken to the point of vanishing. Her wrists were bound with coarse rope that bit into skin already raw. Dust clung to her faded dress, worked into the seams, ground into the hem. Her hair hung loose and tangled around her cheeks, catching on her tears. Beside her towered her husband, Hank Toever, broad-shouldered and flushed, drunk not on whiskey but on the power of being watched. He held the rope that tied her to the saddle horn of his buckskin mare and sneered at the faces around him, savoring the murmurs like applause. An infertile wife, he called out, voice ringing across the square. A curse on a man's house. Might as well give folks a show if she can't give me a son. Laughter rippled, uneasy but present. Maribel shut her eyes. She had never told anyone the truth. Years ago, a childhood accident had shattered something deep inside her, damage no doctor could see but every doctor had confirmed. She carried the secret like a brand burned under the skin, terrified Hank would cast her aside if he knew. She had never imagined he would choose something worse. Hank flicked the reins. "Walk, girl," he said. "Or let the horse do it for you." The mayor stepped forward, face set and hands steady as he took hold of the rope, jerking it tight. Maribel stumbled. Her knees hit the packed earth, skin splitting beneath her stockings. Dust rose around her like smoke. Hank's grin spread wide. "That's what a barren wife looks like," he boomed. "Drag her. Let folks see." The mayor began to move, unbothered, pulling her across the square. Her dress tore at the knee. Her palms shredded as she clawed for purchase, trying to lift herself. Boots and skirts shuffled back to clear a path. Some covered their mouths. Others leaned in, fascination winning over shame. A small boy tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mama, why is she being dragged?" The woman pulled him close. "Hush now. Look away." The spectacle did not stop. From the road leading down the mountain ridge, a lone rider entered the square. His horse was a vast gray with a thick winter coat, breath puffing white in the cooling air. The man on its back looked carved from the wilderness itself, beard dark and rough, eyes set deep beneath a weathered brow. Elias Thorne. Mountain man. Trapper. Hunter. A ghost who lived high and alone, rarely descending. When he did, Dry Gulch pretended not to notice him. Today, no one could ignore the way he reigned in the instant he saw Maribel being dragged. His jaw set. His eyes darkened. He swung down before the dust settled around his boots. Maribel heard heavy footsteps, sure and unhurried, and tried to lift her head. The light wavered through her tears. A shadow fell over her and she flinched, bracing for Hank. Instead, a calm voice rumbled above her. "Hold still, man." Before anyone could process it, Elias stepped forward, axe already in hand. In one swift, practiced motion, he brought the blade down. Steel-bit rope with a crack sharp as gunfire. The fibers snapped. The mayor jolted back. The dragging stopped. Silence swallowed the square. Hank's face twisted red with fury. What in hell do you think you're doing? Elias did not answer. He crouched beside Maribel, sliding one steady arm beneath her shoulders so she could sit without scraping herself further. He did not stare. He did not touch more than necessary. Every movement was careful, deliberate, respectful. When he stood to face Hank, the whole town seemed to inhale and forget how to breathe. No woman deserves to be dragged like an animal, Elias said, voice low and cutting as winter wind. Not yours. Not anyone's. A murmur spread. Hank blinked as if struck. His hand drifted toward his holster. Elias stepped between him and Maribel, broad shoulders blocking her from view. His expression did not change, but something in his stance warned the square that a line had been crossed and would not be crossed again. Maribel, trembling and bruised, stared at the man who had appeared from nowhere, who had cut her free when no one else dared. Dry Gulch had seen cruelty before. But that evening it saw something else too, an act of defiance quiet and steady, strong enough to stop a town cold. The dust was still settling when Elias knelt again. Maribel lay curled on her side, hands scraped raw, lip bleeding, the edge of her dress torn where the rope had burned through cloth and skin. She expected roughness. What she felt was gentleness. Elias moved with precision, slipping off his heavy wool coat and draping it over her shoulders. He examined her wrists with surprisingly gentle hands, checking for breaks. "You're lucky," he said softly. "No fractures. Just bruising." She flinched at his voice, face half hidden in her arm. Shame burned hotter than pain. "I'm fine," she whispered hoarsely. "You're not," he replied. "But you will be." Hank was not finished. He stormed toward them, spitting rage. "You think this is over? You cut my wife loose in front of the whole damn town." Elias rose slowly, placing himself between Hank and Maribel without drama. His posture wasn't aggressive. It was final, like a tree rooted too deep to move. "You lay hands on her again," Elias said, calm as still water, "you answer to me." Hank's hand closed around his pistol grip. "I could put a bullet in you right now." Elias didn't blink. "If you want to shoot me, make peace with God first." That stalled Hank just long enough. He spat in the dirt and shoved through the crowd. Whispers flared. Women pulled shawls tighter. Some looked at Maribel with something like sympathy. Others retreated into habit and silence. Men muttered louder. "A woman like that ain't worth defending. Can't birth a child, can't keep a home. She ought to be grateful he didn't sell her." Maribel heard every word. She did not look up. Elias leaned close. "Can you stand?" She nodded. "Barely." He extended a hand and waited, no pressure. When she placed her trembling palm in his, he lifted her easily. As they moved through the onlookers, Elias raised his other hand, not to threaten, but to shield her face from the staring. It was a small gesture, unnoticed by most, but to Maribel it felt like the first kindness in years. They reached the infirmary, a single-room building with a chipped sign and shuttered porch. Elias nudged the door open with his boot and guided her inside. "You shouldn't have done that," Maribel whispered. "You shouldn't get involved." Elias met her gaze. "I already am." She sat on the edge of the cot, fingers twisting in her lap. "He'll come for me tonight," she said. "He always does when I make him look weak." Elias looked at her, truly looked, past the bruises to the hurt that didn't bleed. "You're not going back there," he said. Her eyes lifted. "I have nowhere else." "You do now." Silence stretched thin and trembling, like the first plank laid across a canyon. He turned toward the door. "You rest. I'll keep watch." Wrapped in his coat, Maribel watched him go. She didn't know why he'd come down from the mountain that day. But for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like prey. She felt seen. The wind shifted. Elias felt it the way seasoned men feel storms coming. He packed quickly: canteen, flint, dried meat, rifle, 2 blankets. No time for more. Maribel stood in the doorway clutching his coat like armor. Her lip was swollen, one eye nearly closed, but she looked ready. He handed her his fur cloak. "It'll get cold where we're going. You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." They rode out before midnight, slipping through alleys. Every creak of leather sounded loud. Then chaos erupted behind them. Hank's voice cracked the night. Torches flared. Men rode drunk and furious, kicking doors, shouting threats. Elias took the narrow trail toward the riverbend. Hoofbeats thundered close. "Down," he whispered, pulling Maribel flat against his back, shielding her. They lay still as riders thundered past. At dawn they reached a narrow rock cleft, shelter just enough. Elias built a fire. She sat silent. He laid a blanket between them. "I won't sleep," he said. "But you should." She shook her head. "I can't." After a while she spoke. "Do you want to know the truth?" He nodded. "My mother dropped me when I was 7. There was bleeding inside. They said I'd live, but something was damaged. I never told Hank. I thought I could pray it away." Elias set his blade down. "Infertility is not a crime. It shouldn't be a curse either," he added. Her face crumpled as years of ache broke open. He didn't touch her. His presence was enough. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. He met her eyes. "Because someone should have a long time ago." The trail climbed into pines. Dawn broke pale and cold. A small cabin appeared at the clearing's edge, sturdy and warm. Inside was simple and safe. Elias lit the lamp, handed her a blanket, then returned with her worn shoes and began repairing them without comment. He gave her a small knife. "It's for you." That night's sleep came slowly. He stayed. Days passed. She cleaned, cooked, learned. He gave space, not absence. One night she asked about Dry Gulch. He spoke of his sister, Ruth, beaten and ignored, dead before he returned. Snow fell. Tracks appeared. "They're coming," he said. "Hank." Elias left before dawn, bow slung across his shoulder, boots already crusted with ice as he slipped into the trees. Snow had fallen quiet in the night, smoothing the land into something deceptively gentle. Maribel watched him go from the cabin doorway until the forest swallowed his shape. Then she turned back inside, ribs still aching, body slow, but her mind sharp in a way it had never been before. She moved through the cabin carefully, washing the tin plates, folding the blankets, setting the kettle back on its hook. Everything had a place here. Order without cruelty. When she noticed Elias's coat draped over the chair, something tugged at her. She hesitated, then reached into the inner pocket. Her fingers brushed cloth. What she pulled free was small, hand-sewn, faded blue. A charm. Wrapped tight in thread. One letter stitched into the edge, uneven but careful. Arthur. Maribel's breath caught hard enough to hurt. She knew that cloth. Years ago, when her father hauled supplies near Dry Gulch, a girl had come with the wagon once. Quiet. Kind-eyed. She'd worn a ribbon just like this and said her mother made it to keep her safe. Her name had been Ruth. The charm trembled in Maribel's hand as memory slammed into her chest. Elias returned near dusk, snow-dusted rabbits hanging from his hand. He stopped short when he saw Maribel standing by the table. "I know who she was," she said softly. Elias froze. "What?" "Your sister. Ruth." She held up the charm. "I met her once. I never forgot this." The rabbit slipped from his grasp. How? I heard her scream one night, Maribel whispered. I didn't know it was her then. But I remember the man dragging her behind the stables. Crooked lip. Long scar. Elias's breath slowed to nothing. Hank, she said. Silence fell heavy. Elias's jaw clenched. Then he killed her. It wasn't a question. Maribel nodded. I'm sorry. He shook his head. You were a child. The fire cracked. He hurt you, Elias said. She nodded again. Now I know why. He stared into the flames. We can't hide forever. He'll come. Let him. She held out the charm. She always carried it, she said. Elias took it with shaking fingers. Maybe now it will protect someone. The mountains no longer felt like refuge. They felt like a gathering storm. The forest grew too quiet. Elias paced the tree line, senses sharp. Maribel watched from the firelight. I'm going down there, she said. He turned. No, you can't protect me forever. I won't let him take you. She met his eyes. What if it's the only way? He turned away, fear and fury tangling in his chest. He didn't see her leave at dawn. The cabin stood empty when he returned. Her scarf lay in churned mud, bright red. He dismounted. The trap snapped. Men burst from the trees. He fought like a cornered animal, fists flying, until a rifle butt slammed into his skull. Darkness swallowed him. He woke on his knees in Dry Gulch's jailhouse, wrists bound, head ringing. Hank stood before him grinning. Thought you could play hero? Elias lifted his head. Where is she? You'll see. Outside, hooves echoed. Maribel stood in the square again, wrists bound, rope tied to Hank's saddle. She came to me, Hank announced. Begged forgiveness. Through the bars, Elias saw her. Her chin was lifted. No, she breathed when she saw him. Hank yanked the rope. I'll show this town what happens. The jail door slammed. Elias dropped to his knees and clawed at a loose floorboard his sister once pointed out. Behind it lay a rusted nail. He cut at the rope until it snapped. Outside, Hank mounted. You should have stayed where you belonged. The horse lurched. Elias burst from the jailhouse. The square bristled with tension. Hank cracked the reins. Maribel was dragged forward, knees tearing open. From the alley, Elias ran like a falling tree, axe raised. One swing. The rope snapped. The horse reared. Maribel collapsed free. Elias stood over her, axe dripping rope fibers. Try that again, he said. Hank drew his pistol. She's my wife. No man has that right. Maribel found her voice. He killed your sister. Gasps rippled. A woman stepped forward. I saw it. Hank lunged with a knife. The fight was brutal, dirt and blood. Elias fought with grief-fueled fury, pinning Hank at last, knocking him senseless. Silence fell. Maribel steadied Elias, not as a victim, but as an equal. Dry Gulch watched justice take shape at last. The town of Dry Gulch did not erupt in cheers when Hank Toever fell. There was no sudden swell of triumph, no easy relief. Instead, the square lingered in a strange, unsettled quiet, the kind that comes when something long rotten has finally been cut away and no one knows what grows in its place. Dust drifted slowly back to the ground. Men shifted their weight and looked at their boots. Women stood frozen, hands clenched in their shawls, eyes fixed not on the fallen man but on the woman who had survived him. Maribel knelt where Elias had shielded her moments before, breath ragged, palms pressed to the dirt as if the earth itself was the only thing keeping her upright. She felt the ache in her knees, the burn in her wrists, but beneath it all was something new and unsteady, a sense that the worst thing had already happened and she was still here. Elias straightened slowly, chest rising and falling, blood streaking one sleeve where the knife had caught him. He did not look down at Hank again. The man was finished. Whatever life he had carved through fear and silence had ended the moment the truth had been spoken aloud. Maribel reached for Elias's arm, not for rescue, but to ground him, to steady the storm that still lived behind his eyes. Her fingers trembled against his sleeve, and he felt it, felt her there, present and unbroken. Around them, the crowd shifted. Sarah Nettles stepped forward first, her face pale but resolved. "I should have spoken," she said, voice cracking but clear. "I saw what he did years ago. I was afraid." Maribel met her gaze. "You spoke today," she said quietly. "That matters." Others followed, not with words of confession, but with small gestures. A man removed his hat. A woman nodded, eyes wet. Old Mr. Kemp, the blacksmith, stood heavy and still at the edge of the square. "Never thought I'd see the day," he muttered, "a man from the mountain showing more honor than the rest of us." Elias did not answer. His attention stayed on Maribel, on whether she could stand, on whether she needed water, on whether the crowd was closing in or finally stepping back. Someone fetched the sheriff at last, a man newly sober and visibly shaken, who took in the scene with a grim understanding that there would be no argument today. Hank Toiver was dragged away, not with spectacle, but with the dull efficiency reserved for men whose power had run out. The square emptied slowly after that. No one lingered long. There was too much to reckon with, too many years of looking away pressing in on them. By the time the sun dipped low again, Dry Gulch felt smaller, quieter, as if the land itself was exhaling after holding its breath for decades. Elias and Maribel did not wait for nightfall. They packed what little they had need of, moving with the same quiet purpose that had carried them out before. A blanket. Some dried bread. A canteen filled fresh. Elias retrieved a small silver pendant from the remnants of his sister's old things, the last piece of her he carried. He wrapped it carefully and placed it in his pack. The town offered more. Food. Ammunition. Apologies spoken too late to mean much. Elias declined most of it. Dry Gulch had already taken enough. Maribel did not say goodbye to anyone. There was nothing left for her there. No memory untouched by pain. No doorway that didn't echo with the sound of boots behind her. They rode out as the sky blushed with the first hints of evening, the sun sliding low and gold behind the ridge. No one stopped them. No one called out. 2 days later, after long miles through switchbacks and dense pine, they reached the ridgeline above the valley. The land opened wide there, wild and unclaimed, the mountains falling away to reveal a silver river winding through the lowlands like a ribbon pulled loose from the sky. Elias dismounted first and tied the horse to a weathered stump. He turned and offered a hand. Maribel took it, the wind tugging at her coat, lifting strands of her hair into the light. They stood side by side, breathing the cold, clean air. The world felt vast in a way that did not threaten to swallow her. Maribel wrapped her arms around herself, not from cold, but from the weight of everything she had carried for so long. Then she felt Elias's hand brush against hers. He did not take it. He left it there, open, waiting. She looked up at him, searching his face for expectation, for demand, for anything that felt like a claim. She found none. His voice came low and rough, softened by meaning rather than fear. "If you walk these mountains with me," he said, "you will never be dragged again." The wind moved through the pines. A beat passed. A breath. Maribel placed her hand in his. "Then this is where I begin," she said. There was no kiss. No grand declaration. Just the quiet understanding of two people choosing the same direction. They turned toward the trees, toward the cabin waiting somewhere beyond the ridge, toward a life that would be hard and honest and their own. One step, then another. No promises beyond what could be kept. No vows carved in stone. Only a hand held in strength and choice. The sun slipped lower, painting the horizon in gold, and as they walked into the gathering dusk, their shadows stretched long behind them, no longer running, only moving forward together. The cabin waited in the trees the way some places do, not welcoming, not refusing, simply present. Smoke rose thin from the chimney where Elias had banked the coals days before, and the smell of cedar and cold earth wrapped around them as they stepped inside. Maribel paused just over the threshold, one hand still resting in his, as if the act of crossing mattered. The fire crackled softly when Elias stirred it back to life, and light filled the small room in slow, patient waves. Nothing here asked anything of her. No eyes judged. No walls whispered. She exhaled, long and unsteady, and only then realized how long she'd been holding her breath. Life did not suddenly become easy. The mountains did not soften for mercy. Winter pressed hard, and days were shaped by work that left hands raw and muscles burning. Maribel learned the weight of water buckets, the rhythm of chopping kindling, the quiet satisfaction of bread rising near the hearth. Elias showed her how to read tracks, how to set snares, how to listen for the difference between wind and warning. He corrected her gently when she erred and let her struggle when the lesson mattered. He never spoke to her as if she were fragile. He spoke as if she were capable. At night they sat near the fire, sometimes speaking, often not. Silence here was not punishment. It was rest. Snow came early and heavy. The world narrowed to white and shadow, to the cabin and the paths Elias cut through drifts taller than Maribel's shoulders. Some nights the wind howled so fiercely it rattled the shutters, and she woke with her heart racing, the old fear clawing its way back. Elias would already be awake, stoking the fire, present steady and unmovable. He never asked what she dreamed. He simply stayed. Word reached them slowly, carried by trappers and passing hunters. Dry Gulch had changed, not into something good, but into something quieter. Hank Toever did not walk free again. Some said the sheriff had found his courage too late but found it all the same. Others said the town would never wash the stain from its square. Maribel listened without comment. The place no longer owned her story. Spring came with a reluctant thaw. Snow pulled back inch by inch, revealing dark soil and stubborn green. Maribel planted a small garden near the cabin, hands deep in the earth. Some seeds sprouted. Others did not. She accepted both without judgment. One afternoon, as she knelt in the dirt, she felt Elias's shadow fall across her. He watched her work for a long moment before speaking. "You've changed," he said. She glanced up, brow smudged with soil. "So have you." He nodded. It felt like truth that didn't need explaining. There were moments she still flinched at sudden movement, moments his dreams dragged him back to the sound of his sister's scream. They did not heal cleanly. They healed honestly. Late one evening, as the sky burned purple and gold beyond the trees, Maribel stepped outside alone. She stood at the edge of the clearing, the silver river far below catching the last light. Elias joined her without a word. They stood shoulder to shoulder, not touching, not distant. "I used to think my life ended in that square," she said quietly. "Like that was all I'd ever be." Elias shook his head. "You were never what they said you were." She turned toward him. "You know I can't give you children." The words trembled, old fear rising. He met her gaze, steady and sure. "I know," he said. "And it doesn't lessen you." Something inside her loosened, finally, completely. The sun slipped below the ridge, and night settled gentle and sure. They went inside together, not bound by vows or promises carved in stone, but by choice renewed each day. In the months that followed, the cabin filled with signs of living. A second chair by the fire. Dried herbs hanging from the rafters. Laughter, quiet but real. They did not pretend the past had not shaped them. They simply refused to let it decide what came next. On a morning clear and bright, Maribel stood on the ridge again, wind tugging at her hair, Elias beside her. She took his hand this time without waiting, fingers lacing with his. The mountains stretched wide before them, indifferent and enduring. She felt small, and for the first time, it did not feel like a curse. It felt like freedom. Somewhere far below, the silver river whispered through stone and bend, carrying with it the truth that survival could become living, that dignity once reclaimed did not have to be defended every moment, only honored. They turned back toward the cabin, toward the life they were building step by step, not running anymore, not hiding, just walking forward together, steady and unafraid. And that was the story of a woman broken by cruelty and the mountain man who reminded her she was never meant to crawl, only to stand, to choose, and to walk into her own horizon.